Welcome to 21st Sports recap and reaction for the Denver Broncos at the Cleveland Browns in their Week 6 matchup played October 18th, 2015. We're going to go over all the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. And this was a crazy game. It came to a close in a crazy fashion as it would end up in overtime. But let's start off in the first quarter with about a little less than 3 minutes still left in the first. Brandon McManus hit a 29-yard field goal, and that made it 3-0 Denver over Cleveland. So that would be it for the first quarter, as this game started off low scoring. And in the second quarter, just less than a minute in, Aqib Talib picked off Josh McCown and returned it 63 yards for the pick six, and it was 10-0 Denver over Cleveland. So that would be the score after the first half as we went to intermission, as we saw no offensive touchdowns in the first half of this game. But in the second half, less than 4 minutes in, McCown would connect with Gary Barnidge for an 11-yard touchdown, as Cleveland was the first team to get into the end zone in this game on offense, and Coons added the extra point, and it was a 3-point game, with Denver still in the lead by 3, with the score 10-7. So then with a little over 2 minutes still left in the third, McManus would hit his second field goal of the game, this one a 25-yarder, and it was a 6-point lead now for the Broncos with the score 13-7. So that was the score after 3 quarters of play. And now on to the fourth. And what a wild fourth quarter this was. Less than 2 minutes in, about a minute and a half in, Brandon McManus would hit a 39-yard field goal, and the Broncos went up by 9 with the score Denver 16, Cleveland 7. Then with a little over 9 minutes left to play in regulation, Josh McCown connected with Gary Barnidge for their second touchdown of the game. This one a 14-yarder. Travis Coons added the extra point, and it was now a 2-point game with the score 16-14. Denver still in the lead. Then just over a minute later, Carlos Dansby picked off Peyton Manning, and he ran it back 35 yards for the touchdown. And after scoring the touchdown, they went for 2. They failed, but they were in the lead by 4 now with the score Cleveland 20, Denver 16. So the Browns took the lead for the first time in this game about midway through the fourth. But then on the very next play from scrimmage, Peyton Manning hit Emmanuel Sanders, and Emmanuel Sanders went 75 yards for the touchdown. And the Broncos were back in the lead 14 seconds later. McManus added the extra point, and it was 23-20. Broncos up by 3. Now at this point, once they got that touchdown, a huge touchdown right there, and the Browns ended up going 3 and out on the next possession. Denver would then go 3 and out. The Browns got the ball back, and at this point there was a little under 5 minutes left in regulation. They were down by 3, and they went 52 yards in 10 plays, and that would be capped off by a field goal by Travis Coons, a 26-yard field goal that tied this game up at 23 apiece. So that when he hit the field goal, there was about a minute 30 left in regulation. And so then after that field goal, the Broncos would end up going 3 and out. And so now the Browns would take over. And they took over with a chance to actually win this game. And they were heading down the field. They got to midfield into Denver territory. But on 2nd and 10 from the Denver 46, was less than a minute left to play in regulation. The game tied at 23. Bruton comes up big for Denver, picking off McCown, and now the Broncos would get the ball back. The Broncos would not be able to score in the time that they had, as there was less than a minute left, and so we would be heading to overtime. So crazy interception there, and that would take us to overtime, as neither team scored after the game became tied, and now into overtime. So in overtime, Peyton Manning would end up throwing his third interception of the game. as he was intercepted by Mingo. And so once he threw that interception, now the Browns would get the ball, and they had a chance to win this one with a field goal as Denver had already had possession. But on this possession, McCown would be sacked twice by the Denver defense as Jackson would sack him on second down, and then on third down, Barrett and Smith combined to sack him, and that would set up a 4th and 28 in which Cleveland would be forced to punt the ball. So they would end up punting the ball to the Broncos. Peyton Manning now given another chance after throwing that third interception, which came early on in overtime. He would now drive the Broncos down the field, 13 plays, 72 yards, capped off by a 34-yard field goal by Brandon McManus, as the Denver Broncos somehow, someway, find a way to win. And they win this one 26-23 with a game-winning field goal by McManus. So McManus is the 34-yarder, and that one keeps Denver undefeated. So Denver remains undefeated with a crazy road victory in Cleveland. The Browns had this game. They had a really good shot at knocking Denver off of that undefeated list, but the Broncos are just a team that does not go down. They refuse to lose. They're 6-0, 4-0 on the road, so they've already played twice as many road games as they have home games here in 2015, and that Denver defense finds a way to win. Even though Peyton Manning threw 3 interceptions, the Broncos defense ended up forcing 3 turnovers in this game. They had a couple of picks themselves. They also forced a fumble. They also sacked McCown 4 times in the game. And they also, of course, that pick 6 by Aqib Talib was the first touchdown of the game. And then they end up coming up with those big back-to-back sacks to force the Browns to go 3 and out and get Peyton back the ball. And, you know, if you give Peyton another chance, he's usually going to succeed. Even though he made those mistakes, he ends up leading them on that game-winning drive. And that's the thing, Peyton Manning, that's, he bounces back. Even, in the past when he was more mistake-prone, he still always got back on the saddle and, he never quits. And, of course, for a long time, Peyton Manning was playing at an exceptionally high level. This year he's been struggling, but even still, he still has that poise to, even though he threw 3 interceptions, and even with that interception in overtime, which would demoralize most teams and most quarterbacks, he had the poise, the veteran leadership to bounce right back, lead him down the field, and McManus hits that game winner. And in this game, Peyton Manning, 26 for 48, 290 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Josh McCown, 20 for 39, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Hillman had 111 yards in this game off of 20 carries. Anderson had 13 carries for 41 yards as they're running all over the Browns. Of course, the Browns have one of the worst run defenses in football. That's one thing I do in fantasy. I see who are the Cleveland Browns going against. All right, I'll take their running back. That's usually a good way to go. But on the receiving end, Demaryius Thomas, 10 receptions for 111 yards. And Emmanuel Sanders, 4 receptions for 109 yards, including that 75-yard touchdown. So Emmanuel Sanders came up clutch down the stretch for Denver. And late in the game, he made some big catches. Not just that one, but also I think he made a catch on third down that was pretty big as well. But Anderson also had 25 yards off of 4 receptions, which gave him a total of 66 yards in the game. Hillman also had 3 catches for 4 yards, which gave him 115 total yards on the game. And for the Browns, their leading rusher was Duke Johnson. The rookie had 9 carries for 38 yards. Crowell, 11 carries for 32 yards. And Travis Benjamin had another big game, 9 receptions, 117 yards. Gary Barnridge, 3 receptions for 39 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. And the kickers, Travis Coons, 1 for 1 on the field goal, 2 for 2 on the extra points. McManus was 4 for 5 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And on defense, Desir had 10 tackles for Cleveland. Dansby had 2 interceptions for the Browns, and Mingo had an interception as well. And for the Broncos, Danny Trevathan, 7 tackles. Barrett had 1.5 sacks and a forced fumble. Marshall had a sack. Jackson had a sack. Aqib Talib had an interception, as did Bruton. And for first downs, the Broncos 21-20 for the Browns. And on third downs, 4 for 18 for Denver. Just 22% conversion rate on third downs as they were struggling to move the chains on third down. And for the Browns, 6 for 15, 40% conversion rate. The Broncos went for it once on fourth down. They did convert. The Browns also went for it once on fourth down. They did not convert. And when it comes to total yards, 442 for Denver, 298 for Cleveland. Rushing yards netted 152 for the Broncos, 109 for the Browns. Net passing yards, 290 for Denver. Peyton Manning was not sacked at all. And for the Browns, they netted 189 yards through the air as McCown was sacked 4 times by that Denver defense, as that is the staple of this team. That is definitely their identity. They had 8 penalties for 81 yards for the Broncos, 6 for 30 yards against the Browns. Both teams fumbled, but the Browns were the only team to lose the fumble. The Broncos recovered their fumble. And in the red zone, this is why the game was really so close, was the Broncos could not get a red zone touchdown in this game. They were 0 for 3, 0% in the red zone for touchdowns. And for the Browns, 2 for 3, they were 66%. The Broncos had the ball for 36 minutes and 44 seconds, 33 minutes and 20 seconds for the Browns. Of course, playing that overtime, they played about 10 minutes of overtime in this game. Yeah, Denver just could not get it in the red zone, and that's why this game ended up going to overtime. If they had converted some of those opportunities in the red zone, then at that point, they would have, it wouldn't have gone to overtime. They would have won pretty easily. But the Browns, they played a heck of a game here to almost knock off the Broncos. The Broncos just have such a spectacular defense, even with, all those turnovers, like I said, by Peyton. They were struggling on that facet. Cleveland, they do have, some good players on their defense, although their run defense is one of the worst in the league, at least statistically. And you saw that with, Hillman and with Anderson just running all over them, although they didn't necessarily, have a lot of attempts. But Hillman, he was getting the job done. He did get his carries in. And they were, even though they threw the ball an extra 15 times, but, that was kind of an interesting thing. I was kind of surprised they didn't run it more, as much success as they were having on the ground. And then for the Browns, they couldn't run on Denver's. Denver's defense was just shutting down their run, and they were shutting them down pretty well through the air too, although Benjamin was getting, his catches in, which, he's pretty unstoppable. But he was really, and Barnridge also was doing good there, especially in the red zone. So he had those couple of touchdowns for Cleveland, made it interesting. And so then they got those, 3 interceptions, which kept it close, as they were able to turn those into points. But Denver also turning turnovers into points in this game as well. But in the end, the Browns, they always find a way to lose. And this season especially, the Broncos find a way to win once again. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend. And enjoy all the sports.